What is up everyone, it's Skill Up here with another Division video. This is my weekly Should I Buy It? Look at what are the vendors selling, should you buy it, and if you do buy it, how do you mod it? I'm going to continue doing these videos over the next few weeks, even though the game is about to go through some pretty drastic changes in the upcoming 1.4 update. I know a lot of people are wondering, what is the point of a vendor video if the gear that we buy may be useless in a few weeks' time? Well, the fact is there's still going to be a lot of people playing this game, there's still going to be people buying from the vendors, and I want to continue keeping this up for them. But yeah, obviously with the caveat that, hey, everything could change. We just need to be aware of that risk and we need to factor it into our decision making. But regardless, let's get on with it and let's see what's available this week at the base of operations. All right, so first up at the special equipment vendor upstairs, we have the Historian, as always, whatever. SASG-12, it's a level 204 with Unforgiving, with Destructive, and with Brutal. Now this is awesome. First of all, SASG-12 is pretty much the best PvE shotgun in the game. The M870 is the best PvP shotgun in the game. If I show you mine that I'm using, because I do use an SASG, or a sausage as it's affectionately known, we see here that there's only 4k damage difference between the two of them, right? In terms of your damage sheet's going to be different to mine, so don't worry about that, but relatively speaking, it's a small amount of difference between the two, and this has really excellent talents on it. It's got Unforgiving, it's got Destructive, and it's got Brutal. Now, obviously Destructive is PvE focused. This is a PvE focused weapon, so that's perfect. We've got Brutal, headshot damage, fantastic for this weapon, given it's actually surprisingly accurate. And finally, we have Unforgiving. I'd probably recommend rolling this one away. You generally speaking don't want to be running with this one unless you're sort of looking to use it in PvP. But hey, it's cool. It's just a great item. And I wouldn't just think about this as an Alpha Bridge item. I would think that it's very possible this could be a direct upgrade for you, even if you have a 229 shotgun. So have a good look at this one. It's a very solid purchase. The next SASG we have here is Capable, Fierce, and Restored. Yeah, I mean, it's exactly the same item level. It's just the talents aren't as good, and the damage roll isn't as good either. You know, so you can see here 54k versus 58k, and there's nothing cheeky sort of jacking these stats here, except for Brutal, obviously, which increases damage, but that's real damage increase. It's not like Accuracy, which artificially inflates your damage. Brutal is a straight up legit increase to your damage. So that's that. SASG-12 there, really, really good. This last one, LVOAC, Self-Preserved, Brutal, and Ferocious. Now, this is a very good item. The 20% enemy armor damage is a bit on the low side, no question about that. But it doesn't matter because you're not going to be using this as your main weapon. This is a 182. It's got a much lower damage roll than what you would like. You're going to be using this in an Alpha Bridge build, and it is perfect for that. It's got Self-Preserved, fantastic talent to run with in pretty much any circumstance. Brutal, which we've just spoken about, and Ferocious. Damage against elite and named enemies is increased by 13%. This one is generally speaking very difficult to unlock because of its electronics requirement, but here it's just free because it's in the 3rd slot. So hey, listen, buy this thing if you run an assault rifle Alpha Bridge build. You will absolutely not regret it. Oh my god, I cannot wait until 1.4, this goddamn staircase. Downstairs in the terminal at the other special equipment vendor, we have, again, the Historian. We have an MP7. Now, I know everyone gets excited when they see MP7s, but sadly, this one is nothing to get excited about. Accurate. You really don't need accurate on this weapon. They're already quite accurate and stable as it is. Restored, we've already talked about. This is a really awful talent. Try and avoid this at all costs. And Capable, using a skill improves the handling of your weapon by for 13.5 seconds. The thing is, it's already really easy to handle. So unfortunately, this is not a good roll. It doesn't work either as a primary or as an Alpha Bridge item, so just skip this one. We do have this First Wave Vector 45 ACP though. It's a 204 item. It's got Stable, not a great talent. Definitely recommend rolling that one away. We've got Brutal, which is obviously fantastic, and we've got Competent. Weapon damage is increased by 13.5% for 10 seconds after using a skill. This is a very good weapon. This is a very good weapon for an Alpha Bridge build. If you're running Alpha Bridge SMG combo, you could do a lot worse than running with this thing. As I said, roll away the Stable because it brings you almost nothing, especially on an SMG. They're really, really stable as it is. But hey, listen, otherwise, it's solid as. So have a good look at it. It could work for you. Finally, we have a classic M60 with Balance Restored and Adept. M60, decent weapon now these days, but I still wouldn't recommend using it generally speaking, and I certainly wouldn't recommend it with these talents. All right, so at the special blueprints vendor, we have this week something quite interesting, the Black Market AK-74 blueprint. Now, obviously, this is still just for a 204, but the AK-74 is a very respectable weapon. It's one of the best assault rifles in the game behind the G36. It actually has the highest per bullet damage of any weapon in the game. any assault rifle in the game, except for the burst fire FAL category, but I wouldn't use the FAL because you just lose too much DPS from that burst fire. But look, if you like assault rifles and you like an AK-74, you can manage the instability of it, I definitely recommend picking up this pattern because 204 can still be quite decent. And also, finally, we have the Firearms Gear Mod Blueprint. It's the level 32 one. It's there. If you haven't got it, grab it, and let's head downstairs. Downstairs in the underground, we have a fairly disappointing haul. We have the sort of score 229, rank 40 item as an enhanced PP19 with Provident. Terrible talent for an automatic weapon. Do not get it. Fierce, great talent generally speaking, but yeah, blocked behind 2260 electronics, which no one goes into, so unfortunately disappointing. And Hurried, which is, as I said, is a very good PvE talent, really recommend that one generally speaking. So sadly, this one is a pass. We have a G36 with Adept, Commanding, and Focus, nothing worth calling out here, so skip this one. We have another G36 with Vicious, Self-Preserved, and Focus. Now, this one is actually quite good. Now, as I said, this is actually an Alpha Bridge item. Obviously, it's a 182. It's rank 10 item. Vicious is critical hit chance when you're at full health. Yeah, okay, fair enough. It's not great. I generally like rolling it away, but in this instance, I'd actually prefer rolling away Focus because you generally speaking want to be using your talents more than not. So just keep that in mind. But obviously, Self-Preserved is really great and fits really well with an Alpha Bridge build because you get basically have 5 DPS focused talents and then Self-Preserved to get a fair amount of healing out of your really jacked DPS. So very solid weapon. If you, as I said, Alpha Bridge, if that's your thing with an assault rifle, do think about this one. It could work. Finally, a Paratrooper SVD with Trained, with Stable, and with Decisive. There is nothing special here. I do not recommend this weapon. And with that, let's head over to the DZ and see what's available. At the DZ3 vendor this week, we have some fairly interesting items. We've got a lightweight M4, which is a 182 item. It's got Predatory, Talented, and Meticulous. Wouldn't recommend this one. Nothing special there. We've got a classic RPK 74 with Balanced, no longer a good talent, Restored, we've already talked about, is terrible, and Brutal. Brutal obviously is excellent. I wouldn't recommend this weapon though, not a great combination. The 204 Black Market SASG-12 with Meticulous, Fierce, and Determined is not as good as what we just saw back in the base of operations, so skip that one. We've got a Surplus SVD with Stable, Restored, and Decisive. Plenty of Restored this week, plenty of Stable. Sadly, none of those are particularly great, so do skip this one. And finally, we've got a SOCOM MK20 SSR. Now, it's got a great headshot damage roll at 170%, fantastic. Trained, critical hits increase signature skill resources by 0.1%. Not great on this because you're not really going for crit on a marksman rifle. You're actually going for headshot damage. Commanding, not great, and Determined, not great. So sadly, not a good weapon there at all. In terms of the blueprints, we've got an MP5, which is an okay SMG. I wouldn't recommend it over an MP7 or a PP19, but look, it holds its own. And finally, we've got an M9A1, which I absolutely would not recommend because the X45 absolutely crushes it. At the DZ4 vendor, the mod vendor, this week the big ticket item from him is Electronics Gear Mod and a Performance Gear Mod, so grab those if you like, but I probably recommend against it because they're not particularly attractive when it comes to what we choose to mod with. And finally, at the DZ5 vendor, the Darkzone Weapon Mod vendor, he is selling an improved iron sights with optimal range and headshot. I wouldn't recommend that. Optimal range is not a particularly compelling stat. He's selling an angled grip red, which I actually would really recommend. Stability and accuracy on this one is a fantastic combination. A lot of weapons require this, such as, say, for example, the majority of assault rifles are going to demand a fair amount of both stability and accuracy. Same with marksman rifles. So it's really solid, and if you haven't got one that's like it or better than it, then I definitely recommend picking it up. The blueprints this week are the CQB-SS scope, which is headshot damage and a random bonus. Very solid pickup. I definitely recommend it. And finally, quick release magazine, which is reload speed. Absolutely would not recommend that. The benefit that you get from reload speed is nowhere near compelling enough. All right, finally, guys, I'd like to just talk you very quickly through how to mod the SASG. Now, the SASG I have here is quite different to the one that you might purchase this week. First of all, mine rolls with accurate, so obviously we'll talk about that in a second. And secondly, it actually has the under barrel mod slot, which your one probably won't if you're buying the one that I've recommended. That's fine though, we can still talk about how we're going to mod these other two slots. So first of all, when it comes to your optical slot, you do actually need some accuracy on this thing, right? The reticle does spread out fairly large without the accurate talent on it. So if you haven't re-rolled that weapon to have accurate, I would absolutely recommend putting some accuracy on it by some means. It definitely helps keep the overall reticle under control. And also, just a quick note, make sure you take cover when you're using a shotgun, because it actually does help your reticle shrink smaller than it otherwise would and keeps it more under control. So that's a bit of an unknown fact with quite a few weapons. They benefit quite a bit from you being in cover. So yeah, do make sure that when you're using this thing, try and be in cover as much as you can be. It's generally possible in a PvE context to do that. The other slot that you'll need to be thinking about is your magazine slot. Now, there's two main choices here. There's rate of fire versus weapon damage. That's generally what you're choosing between. I would absolutely recommend weapon damage with the SASG. It fires really fast already, and I'll show you here. It's a very quick rate of fire, okay? Now, the problem with the faster I fire, the more unstable the weapon gets. And this thing actually, or the one that you'll purchase, doesn't actually have an underbarrel mod slot to help reduce the stability, or reduce the stability issues. So what you really want here is weapon damage. You want the weapon to fire slower and hit harder, because you're going to have a really hard time managing the weapon recoil if you are, packing a rate of fire mod that's just upping your rate of fire. It's just going to make the weapon quite unwieldy. So there are my tips here. I would say in your optical slot, I would put accuracy. In your magazine slot, I would put weapon damage. And in your skin slot, then obviously, red. Red, obviously, red goes fastest. It's the best. That's a given, right? But you know what I mean. All right, guys, that's it for this week. That's Should I Buy It? As I said, I'm going to continue doing this week in, week out as we approach the October 1.4 update. Very excited about that. I've got plenty more to say on that this week. So if you like this video, do drop it a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button now for end-to-end division coverage. Thanks very much for watching, guys. Take care, and I'll see you in the Dark Zone. Bye-bye.